Um, this is from the translations team.
You want to turn that off?
No, you can leave it. We might be able to send it. Okay, this says, I have a consultation from you about the meaning of systems operation, quote, as used in this context. It was one of your little videos. If the cities are near that source, this is a quote from one of your videos. If the cities are near that source, then it becomes more efficient to design the cities as a systems operation, meaning that the city itself must meet the needs of the people that live there. And she said it's from the great video clip where Jacques explains what a resource-based economy is in 8 minutes. When you have a moment, it would be awesome if he would explain it to me a little so I can get the translation proofread.
And now tell me what he wants.
It's Sue.
Oh, she.
If the cities are near, she wants you to further explain this. I guess she said, I have a consultation for you about the meaning of systems operations as used within the cities.
The city is designed as an entire system with built-in transportation, built-in air conditioning, built-in food supplies, that the city is self-sustainable with photoelectric cells on the roof, heat generators built in, so we don't require outside input. That's what self-sufficient means. And systems mean work out the whole system. Have your schools and everything designed centrally so that each district is the same distance from the school system. So you don't have to take your children in different directions. Whereas you live in suburbia today, all they're concerned about is the architecture and the community design. But the schools have to be included in hospitals, emergency cares, and the hospitals should be strategically located so that it's convenient for all the occupants of the city. The air conditioning must be, instead of hanging out of every window, it's delivered in insulated pipes under the ground or near the surface of the ground where people can access air conditioning if they want it. Instead of having a generator in every home generating electricity, we have transmission lines and we transmit that electric current. That doesn't mean it's the best system. It's the best system we have up to now.
That would be true for the waste and everything. It would be...
Oh, recycling, waste, education, transportation, safety factors, fire prevention, and accident prevention in the entire design.
But all those systems would be much more efficient within the geometric design too.
Oh yes. When you do a linear city, if you travel from one end to the other, you have to go back where you started from. A circular city, if you start here, you come back, and you've seen the whole city, you don't backtrack. In linear systems, if you make a very long city, you start at this end, you visit this end, then you have to go back. In the circular scheme, it requires less transportation. One person says, how do you know your city is better than others? Well, I don't have to give them the analysis. I can just tell them that in a linear system, the advantages. If everything is centralized, the people today are brought up against centralization. The reason for it is the government in Washington doesn't know what the conditions are in California and Florida. The conditions are different. So they say, gee, let's have a multiplicity of governments so that each state can accommodate its own needs. But with the internet today, you can get the conditions all over the world. So you can go back to centralization and get conditions in Florida, conditions in Washington, conditions in Oregon State, Canada, anywhere in the world. You don't need to put a research center in every community. I do admit conditions are different, But with the advent of the internet, we can get information in any area, and centralization is much easier than putting different systems in each state.
Is there anything else you want to say about a systems operation? That's what she's asking, what that means.
All
Systems.
inclusive.
Okay.
It means the repair of buildings, roadways, all that have to be factored in. If you do any redevelopment of the roads, it should be done when there's minimum traffic. That's what that means. It means you don't want to change your road during high noon when there's most traffic on the roadways. So you do your innovative opening of the city to get underneath to the pipes that circulate water and all that. You don't want to do that at the optimal time when people are using that facility. There's a lot of signs that says road work being done. Slow down. Well, roadway would begin at 2 in the morning in the future when there's minimum traffic, so it doesn't detain people. Do I like working at night? Not particularly, but that's the way you factor those things in. That's what systems approach means, to include everything you do in that city. Nutrition, waste disposal, feeding people, restaurants, the kind of food people like, and what to do with the waste.
It's not like another corporation would come in and try and retrofit it after it's done.
No.
It would be inclusive.
Corporations usually work on segments of the city and certain aspects. They don't take in the whole operation because they're not hired to do that.
Right.
A plumber is hired to fix your plumbing, not the neighbor's. Even though he lives next door and has inadequate plumbing, he still doesn't go back to that person and say, do you have any plumbing problems? But problems will, instead of you calling up a plumber, in the future, when something goes wrong with the plumbing, it's transmitted automatically to the service sector. And the service sector, you don't need that information, the service sector needs that information. If your lights flicker and they don't give you a constant source of light, if you have a receptor that can measure that, it will transmit it to the electrical service department, not to you. And immediately someone will come. Well, if you transmit it to you, you have to pick up the phone. But the condition will be transmitted. That's what I mean.
Okay.
Do you understand that answer?
Yeah. It's
Okay.
good.
Do you understand the answers I gave?
Yeah.
That has to
Do you
go
have
to
anything
Sue.
you want to add to it? The other method, other than the scientific method, is if you ask me, man will never get to the moon. If you ask me, man will always have war. There's always been war, this is true, and there'll always be war, that's not true. There's always been wars, true, but we haven't learned yet how to stop that. We haven't learned how to make a society that operates for the well-being of all people. We haven't learned how to do that yet. So if anybody proposes that, it seems like a ridiculous proposal to the average person because there's always unemployment in the world. It's always been that way. But a lot of people go by what it has always been. There were always sailboats in the old days. They had no other method of propulsion. Then came the steam engine and the electric dynamo, and sails were not used as much anymore. I don't say it's not used, it's used in crafts where people like the sport of sailing. But sailboats have always been around for maybe more than 1,000 years. So you could say if you want to, there'll never be anything but sailboats if you're a sailboat man. So what we conclude is not necessarily accurate. The scientific method means to check things out and not say this is perfect, this is what we found in relation to the shape of a boat. You can measure those things. And if they make an airplane, they say, well, this plane has much less air resistance and doesn't consume as much fuel. The aerodynamicist will say, well, what is the air resistance of that plane? Guy says, I don't know. Have you put it in a wind tunnel? Not yet. Then put them in a wind tunnel and give me the results. This man has no previous tendency, except if it looks sharper. He might be able to say, I think that would have less wind resistance than a blunt end. But he said, let's test it out. That's how aerodynamics was born. Let's check it out.